So one example for me, and one thing that's important is when you just change one discrete behavior, you are listening on a very, very clear channel as to what your resistance is and what that's about. When you just say, I'm going to do all these things differently, you're putting yourself on tilt. So I'll give you an example. I knew, again, in my quest to lose weight, which I have to say I did lose weight, I became fit, my work life is better than it's been, my relationships are better, I'm more productive. None of these things are perfect, and perfection is never the goal. It's just progress that's the goal. But one of my resolutions was to eat slowly, because I ate very fast. I was the first one done at every meal. And then there was nothing to do except eat more bread or get sex. And I knew it. And I tried to slow myself down. I told myself to chew my food slowly. So that was a personal resolution. But you know, chew my food slowly, as we say, it's not very interesting, right? It's kind of yucky. So I reframed it. Again, remember, part of the dynamics of change is the way you talk to yourself about change. My reformed resolution was to dine leisurely and savor my food and drink. Now, who wouldn't want to do that? We're all interested in that. But the most interesting thing happened. While I was dining leisurely and savoring my food and drink, a strange voice kept cropping up in my head. And it said, if you don't hurry up, you'll never finish all this food. I'm not kidding. It repeatedly, if you don't hurry up, you'll never finish all this food. As if I was such a goal-oriented person that I thought that the most important thing was to finish everything and finish fast. And that one little insight I got from doing something differently was very revealing to me. I realized I rushed in everything I did. I rushed on weekends when I didn't even have any place particular to go. If there was someone in front of me, I wanted to get around that person. If somebody was fumbling with change at the counter, it was like I had made a fetish out of rushing. And I didn't realize it until I focused my attention on just this one thing. So what's really wonderful and enriching about making discrete changes and following through with them is that you can hear that inner voice, which you often can't hear. Okay, so people always say, all right, well, how long does it really take? So the first thing is, whatever you change about what you do, it's going to feel weird at first, okay? You have to think about it. You have to be mindful. And remember, autopilot is mindless. So you have to be very mindful for a period of time in order to get to where you want to get, where it goes into autopilot and it's mindless and just supports you for the rest of your life without willpower. That's what's great about autopilot. That you don't need willpower to just keep something going. And it takes about 4 weeks to 8 weeks. It depends. Before it starts to feel natural, it takes longer before it's really autopilot. You never have to think about it. The next thing is, well, how many of these can you make at one time? And the answer is 2. Beyond 2, for myself, I found I can't keep track of it. I can't keep up with it. And my willpower collapses. I'm being mindful about all these little things I'm trying to do. I can't do it. 2. And people say, well, that's not going to get me where I want to go fast enough. I'm not going to be able to make enough change. Really? The tenet of behavioral science, the tenet on which it is based is, most of the time, what we do is what we do most of the time. Every once in a while, we do something new. Doing something new is profound. Doing something new has impact. And if you make 2 resolutions at a time and run them for 4 to 5 weeks each, you'll make 20 changes to your behavior this year. And that's a lot of change. Okay, so these micro resolutions, and the point of this is designed to help you exploit the dynamics of change to make progress, right? So we're exploiting how willpower works and the fact that it's limited by having a very narrow focus. We're looking at autopilot as something that's going to help and not thwart our efforts by getting in there and reforming an autopilot activity. And we're stating what it is we're doing in terms of actions and doing. Okay, so I've talked about these rules in terms of a lot of sort of self-help classics. But I want to make sure, like to lose weight exercise. But I want to make sure you know that these same techniques work on the self in very profound ways. You can use these same techniques to be a stronger person, to be a better person, by focusing yourself on changing some behaviors. A lot of autopilot activity is centered around relationships. You may not realize it, but your relationships at work, to other citizens, to your family, it's amazing how so much of this is governed by autopilot. And if you change some of your responses that you may not realize are just established patterns, you can have a whole new experience of yourself with other people and interacting with them, whether it's at work or home or on the job. So one of these I made was, I'd come home from work, or I've been on Wall Street, and to me the dinner hour is very important. I wanted to make dinner, made dinner for my family, and I'm doing all this stuff. And my husband would come in and he'd say, oh, you left the light on in the basement. And I would think, okay, I left the light on in the basement. I worked all day. I'm making everybody different, but that's... And I would feel a tremendous amount of resentment. But I didn't express that resentment. Instead, I apologized. And I heard myself apologizing. And then I would follow my apology with a long, long explanation of all the things I had done that day and why it was I had come to leave that light on in the basement. What an expensive spirit, on and on in this defensive way. And my husband would just sort of clam up. He never really said it. And then this cloud would hang over the evening. And one day I thought to myself, what would happen if I just didn't apologize? If I just said, oh, or okay, got it, what would happen? And that defensive impulse of mine was very hard to conquer, but I did it, and amazing things happened. First of all, I didn't carry around a load of anger for the rest of the evening for apologizing when I didn't really mean it. Okay? Don't apologize when you don't mean it. That's profound. Second, my husband behaved better. I mean, he would just say, because I didn't fill up that space with all of my defensiveness about how I really was a perfect person and how he shouldn't really say anything to me, he would say things like, it's no big deal, but I thought you'd want to know, right? And I had better evenings. I had a better relationship because of it. That's just one example of disrupting an autopilot activity. So I want to give you some more of these that you might think about. Okay. If you're defensive at work when you receive feedback, that feedback can come from a superior, it can come from a colleague. If you're a manager, it should be coming from your subordinates because you want feedback. But if you feel defensive and when you hear things, you immediately explain why it is it's not a problem or you didn't get it wrong, you might consider a micro-resolution just to say, oh, I really appreciate you telling me that. I'm going to give it some thought. Okay, you don't have to agree. Maybe you don't think it's fair. But all you have to do is let the other person know that they've been heard. And I'll tell you, if you do that at work and your superior gives you some feedback and you respond that way, your profile as a mature professional person is going to go up. And who knows, it might even be good advice. If you manage a meeting and you manage other people, if you were to solicit feedback from the people who work for you at your one-on-one meeting or something every week, you are going to be a better manager. I have to tell you, if you can't bear to be told you can do something better or be told that maybe you should rethink your position, you shouldn't be managing anybody. You should be soliciting that feedback. If you were to solicit that feedback, not only might you hear something, but you'd be putting the people who work for you on notice that you think feedback's a good thing. Feedback, that's what we call it now. We used to call it criticism. Now, it's developmental feedback. So when you receive that developmental feedback, there's a story of someone in the book who took over a team that was underperforming, and this guy had a reputation for sort of whipping things into shape. And he really thought about what he would need to do to improve that team, and this was his resolution, to ask for feedback. And at first, people didn't give him much feedback because they were sort of startled, right? And then they gave feedback, and then they asked for feedback. It became part of the pattern. So instead of him telling the team, here's what's wrong with you and here's what this team needs to do to change, they began asking him. These are rich changes in the workplace, to have this kind of self-learning environment. And then these same people went back and they asked the people who work for them. So something like that can be can make a big change, make you a stronger person.